Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. One of the things I was most nervous about was trying to explain what my book was about, and you've done it, so I don't have to go into too much detail. Dr. Jukes was a poet, an essayist, a pacifist. He was my great-great-grandfather. And I fell in love with him about 10 years ago when I began to read his diaries, his poetries. There's a huge collection of his writings in the Glenbow Archives in Calgary. And I began sifting through all this material, not sure what to do with it. I tried to write a play, which is the most dismal thing I've ever written. It was awful. I threw it out, gave up on the whole idea. And then about 3 years, 2011, I started thinking, well, maybe I'll just try and write a poem. And then I'll write another poem, and then another poem. And eventually I had a collection. And the initial interest in this period of time was looking at his relationship with Louis Riel, because Dr. Augustus Jukes was appointed to a secret medical commission that the federal government, under Prime Minister Sir John A. Macdonald, set up to see whether Riel had become nuts while incarcerated in prison waiting for his execution. And Jukes was fond of Riel. He saw him every day for 6 months. They conversed. They traded little notes back and forth. They talked poetry. They talked religion. He was loath to see Riel executed, but he could not in good conscience say that he was insane. So you probably know the rest of the story, what happened. Riel was hung. Dr. Jukes was there for his execution. And I sensed through all the readings that I could find written by my great-great-grandfather that there was a tremendous sense of remorse and regret and self-doubt. And I just felt I had to sort of address that. And then other things began to happen, as is the usual case when you begin to write. So with all that said, I'm going to just say one more thing about the book. It spans the years 1873 to 1885. And I chose 1873 because that's the year that there was a horrific massacre that took place in an area called Cypress Hills in southern Saskatchewan. And it was the massacre of about 25 to 30 Assiniboine First Nations people at the hands of mostly American whiskey traders and wolf hunters, bison hunters that would routinely come up across the border and wreak havoc. They were spreading liquor throughout communities and very destabilizing effects. So that kind of pushed the federal government into setting up the Northwest Mounted Police. And Dr. Jukes became a member of that force at the age of 60, left St. Catharines, Ontario, ended up in Regina, bloody cold, horrible place. And at the time, maybe it's nice now, I don't know, I haven't been there. And he ended up having this 6-month daily conversation with Riel. So the first poem I'm going to read is a part of a collection of poems called The Cypress Hills Recipes. And it's sort of a rendering of that event. And I'm going to read just a portion of it. And it's the particular poem is entitled Potluck Surprise, 1873. In Cypress Hills Bowl combine 4 trading posts, employing mostly American rot-gut traders and bison robe hunters. Add Métis freighters and oxen and carts. Gradually stir in 300 Assiniboine camped near Solomon and Farrell's whiskey forts. Fold in 2 American wolfers ranting about 40 missing horses. Add 4 heaping tablespoons of preserved suppositions. Season liberally and let stand until thickened. Add 2 to 3 festive kegs and taste for drunken Indians, wolfers, traders, Métis, etc. Whisk in 1 missing horse and several irate wolfers until batter stiffens. Place Assiniboine in center of well-greased pan. Arrange wolfers, whiskey traders, and Métis freighters in protective coulee along sides of pan. With repeating rifles, Winchesters and Henrys, volley rapidly into camp. Shoot the fleeing, burn lodges, rape women, execute the wounded. Bake in hot oven until 25 Assiniboine are dead, women and children included. Using a clean, sharp knife, test for survivors. Most of the characters in this book, it's sort of a loose narrative, several narratives intertwined, or historical, and I made up two characters that are sort of stand-ins for different things that I wanted to talk about. And one of these is a new recruit to the Northwest Mounted Police, and he's really green. He's just signed up, and he's got a shiny red tunic with his brass buttons, and he's got his kit, and he's got his pony, and he's got all his stuff. And he's out on his first patrol, and he's lost. And he hasn't a clue where to go, and he's running a fever. Most likely he has typhoid fever, which is quite prevalent. And he's found by a Cree woman who is trying to nurse him back to health. So here in this poem, as you do, are in several poems, two voices. His voice in a delirious state, and the voice, very minimal amount of words, of the Cree woman who finds him. It's entitled On First Patrol. Blanket, socks, overshirt, brush, button, gauntlets, comb, knife. She took from me, stripped meat, fresh kill, chewed, deposited on tongue, gagging throat. Shh, swallow, drink this. She is Cree, I think. Fireflies for eyes, sweetgrass burning, or is it sage? See the two suns, two haloed suns, and insects thrumming underground. Conspiracy. Shh, drink. Fingers, temples, pulling the heat, pulling the brass buttons, my scarlet tunic, possibilities. Death shroud, baby carrier, death shroud. Shh. What to bargain for? One pair of boots for one good rein, one good horse for 50 miles, one carbine, a single ball, one open mouth. I'm going to ask Rob to come up here and read with me a poem that requires two voices. And is that better? Okay. Could you hear me, or have I just been whistling in the dark? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, you got the right page? 68. Okay.
I've got the page you told me.
Okay, that's it. This is based on a found text from Dr. Jukes' diaries, and he interviewed an old-timer by the name of Hugh Monroe, who was a white person, but he ended up being adopted into a Blackfoot family, and he was fluent in Blackfoot. And he told Dr. Jukes about an experience he saw of a Blackfoot woman who was really distressed because her husband had died of smallpox. So there's two voices. I'm going to read the voice of the woman.
Am I the voice of the old-timer?
No, you're Dr. Jukes.
I was worried there for a second.
No, you're not an old-timer yet.
You
just like this. You're not an old-timer. Okay. Anyhow, there's two voices here, and the voice of the Blackfoot woman is based on this old-timer's. He witnessed this event, and then he wrote it down. He remembered the woman's words, and he told it to Dr. Jukes. And I found these words in Dr. Jukes' diary. So you're going to read that, and I'm going to read the italics. Okay?
I know.
You got it?
Yes, you
okay,
told me this
good.
before.
I'm just making sure. Okay. This is the name of this poem is Notes from Interviews.
The Blackfoot 60 years ago numbered 100 to 1 of their present number. Then came the smallpox, Sicca Picsin, the third visitation, 1869, carrying away the remaining 2/3. In one camp, 100 tents of dead. Everywhere the dead rolled up in their buffalo robes, often in piles.
Paint and dress his body as of old, and lay it in the bed where we used to lie, and lay me beside him and cover us up, and leave us together as when in life.
She fastened a lariat to the top of the lodge. An old 10-gallon keg she pushed beneath it. She called in her husband's relations, friends, the headmen. She said,
I love my husband. I will go to him. Let none try to prevent me.
Then she mounted the 10-gallon, put her head through the noose, and kicked the keg away.
Thanks. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to decide what I want to read next. Okay, I'm going to read this one. This is a return to our new recruit. He's survived. He's out on the prairie, and it's entitled, Dear Father, I'm feeling much encouraged. Dear Father, I'm feeling much encouraged. Despite hailstones the size of Christmas puddings, coyotes' yellow eye yipping after a charred left leg minus my feckless sock, items regretfully tossed from my dead pony's pack, red woolen mittens from Mother, or whomever it was she sent or paid to send her love, Laura's forever locket, Mayflies ate her portrait after she broke with me. Granny's recipe for mulberry scones. I still don't read Welsh. I assume they presume desertion, a little whoop-up diversion, not this perpetual singing of the Blackfoot dead in Cypress Hills. Okay. Next one I'm going to read is a poem that's based on a 4-hour speech that Chief Big Bear gave in August of 1884. So this would have been the summer before the rebellion broke out the following spring in 1885. He spoke for 4 hours to his followers, trying to encourage sort of a political movement because the treaty obligations weren't being fulfilled. There were widespread starvation at this time. The bison were all but exterminated, and his people were starving. They're literally dying out, and government was dragging their heels. So he gathered, there were thousands of them gathered at this, and there was a police informant there who was fluent in Korean, evidently recorded. I don't know how accurate the words are, but this is, Rudy Weeb's book contains these words. So I've distilled from 4 hours into this poem. It's entitled Big Bear's Speech. He said he speaks for his band as a chief speaks for his people. He said the white agent isn't like that. There is always someone higher whom he never sees. He said the governor called upon the Great Spirit. He said the governor understood that the land is only borrowed. He said he is trying to grasp the promises. He said he sees his hand closing again and again, but can find nothing in it. He said he is afraid to take a reserve. He said what he sees is the tiny piece of land he is told he must choose. He said he feels choked. He said they must speak for that white than whom there is none higher. He said he does not believe the Queen wants them to die the way they are. He said he feels the rope around his neck. He said it is sometimes comes to him that they have been breathed over. He said it is like the trance that falls upon them when Wendigo is coming. He said they must make one grand council. He said they must speak with one thundering voice. Okay. Now for a feminine voice, I'm going to read my imagined take on Dr. Jukes' daughter, Caroline. He had a large family, and Caroline was the last remaining daughter at home, unmarried. I was about 28 at the time, secretly seeing a new recruit, Northwest Mounted Police. And I think quite an intelligent woman, quite perceptive, and very feeling quite uncomfortable where she was. She was living at the Mounties barracks, and surrounded by officers' wives, and polite conversation. In the meantime, all hell is breaking loose around them. So this poem is entitled "Rules for Polite Tea." Officer wives clatter their love for Royal Albert China all the way from London. pink rosebuds set in white. The more experienced debate the risks of chokecherry, jelly, skin, and seeds. A hint of lemon in the pound cake, please. Circulate the Montana story in hushed tones. Farmer disemboweled in a field of corn. Blue-eyed child scooped up with the roan. Mother cut down in the seconds between clothesline and kitchen door. No loosening of corsets. Contribute to the conversation in a thoughtful manner. I could mention the 3 boiled eggs my father brings to Riel on his morning rounds, blue bowls steaming in the prisoner's cell. Let them ponder hard, soft, cracked, or confess the souffle practices, each worsening collapse a sign of my own marriage prospects. I could analyze the pink roses on these perfectly balanced teacups, roses irritable from all that hauling up of skirts and elbowing of ribs to reach the cup's thin rim, out of breath, ill-mannered, teetering at the edge, all for a grander view of the horizon. But in truth, for one good, tight-lipped look at their big-hipped country cousins, Rosa Arkansana, sashing pink across the prairie, chasing invisible bison with garlands of themselves, laced with stipa comata. Ah, the last full-rumped romp before the final ripping out and laying down of civilized imported grasses to please the civilized imported cattle. I could hold out my girlish arms forever and never witness a blue vein announcing spirit animal, as the half-breeds are said to do. Indian Act 1876, Chapter 18, Section 12. The term person means an individual other than an Indian, unless the context clearly requires another construction. I think I mentioned that the pass system began at this time, so you had a little identity card, and if you leave reserve, you have sign in, sign out. You have to have an Indian agent to prove wherever you're going. And this is what South Africa adopted. Great lessons from Canada. This poem is entitled, On the Beauty of the Pass. It is good for our Indians. No more having to explain to them the terms of the Vagrancy Act. A pass for every occasion. Fishing, trapping, hunting, berry picking, shopping. Agents shall report on their movements. If met with resistance, simply threaten to remove their names from the ration list. Okay. It would be well to have a spy or two, and to take away their ponies, brand them as our own, take away their carts, no roaming around without a pass. Now is the time to strain every nerve, gather the names of those who have misbehaved. Farm instructors to be charged each time a vehicle arrives from the reserve, improperly greased or with breakages. Okay. I'm going to read 3 more. And this one is probably the most convoluted. I don't know. Maybe give a little bit of an explanation. Does anyone know what the definition? I know there's a lawyer in the room, so you're not allowed to answer this question, but what's the definition of treason felony? Anybody? Just a wild guess. Come on, just a quick guess. Okay, basically it's disloyalty to the crown, but you don't get executed. You get, am I getting this right, Francis? Something along those lines? Okay. So After the rebellion and the government was going, oh, this is a good opportunity to lock up Chief Big Bear and Chief Poundmaker and a few others who were strong leaders and in our way of progress, there was a trial, and they had several of these people on trial. And of course, the translation was a bit screwed up, translating something like treason felony into Cree. So this poem is trying to show the evolution of that thought process. And it begins with a sort of innocuous language of the treaties. And at that, in 1874, Alexander Morris was one of the commissioners, and he was, in his very lyrical language, was describing to First Nations people, the relationship they would have with the Crown. And then it evolves, and you get to the very last bit of it, and you'll hear the definition. So keep your ear open for a phrase that contains the word Queen's bonnet, because that's the clue to the definition. Toward a definition of treason felony translated for the Cree. Alexander Morris to Chief Poundmaker. I see the Queen's counselors taking the Indian by the hand, saying, "We are brothers. We will lift you up. We will teach you the cunning of the white man." Chief Poundmaker to Alexander Morris. From what I can hear and see now, I cannot understand that I shall be able to clothe my children and feed them as long as the sun shines and water runs. Chief Big Bear to Louis Riel. We should not fight the Queen with guns. We should fight her with her own laws. Edgar Dewey. Any Indian being off his reserve without special permission or in writing from some authorized person is liable to be arrested on suspicion of being a rebel and punished as such. Court interpreter to Chief One Arrow. Translation of translation. Knocking off the Queen's bonnet and stabbing her in the behind with the sword. Chief One Arrow to court interpreter. Are you drunk? This was in the historical record. This actually did. So, anyway. Okay, I have 2 more to go, and then I will release you from history. This next poem is sort of a found poem, a mixture of found poem from Dr. Jukes' diaries. And he was very much interested in different languages. And so he's exploring the notion of punishment by looking at different languages. And the title of this poem is called To Punish. In Latin, punio. Earlier, in Sanskrit, pu. Not mere striking, not torturing, not retribution, not revenge. Instead, cleansing, correcting, delivering from the stain, a removal. He had always told me that he would speak when led to execution, but much to my disappointment, he now declined. He remained hanging for half an hour. I shall not mention the blue heron, its dark head tilted. The last poem is Jukes' voice, my imagining his voice. It's not a found text. And it's entitled, What Water Looks Like in Dreams. What water looks like in dreams. Forced trajectory in the shining spittoon, ridding the system of not white but not yet bloody path from church, a long black tongue extending the brain, the hands drop, the inks resolve, gathering the eyes and floorboards, the soaking up the almost dead, the pennies dropped in wells, the swollen belly in the tepid bath, the empty pantry, flask, gun, barrel, mouth, eyes, womb, the contaminated and the putrid, the skimmed-off rations, the starved Indians, the dark stains spreading on infirmary sheets, the kitchen ceiling, the telegram to the Prime Minister, the priest's mark on the prisoner's forehead, the last swallow, the last clink in the Scotch glass, the ice breaking, hooves, legs buckling, the child's last singing, the missing chamber pot, the washing of bodies, father, mother, 7 children, the view from the bottom of the sea, the first ship crossing. Thank you.